What was I going to do? This was Mark Rosewater.
Welcome to the Tranquil Domain.
Today we're going to talk about one of the most offensive Magic cards ever printed.
But it's not on the list of the 7 cards that Wizards has publicly recognized as offensive.
It's one that flew under the radar somehow.
It started as an inside joke around the pro Magic circuit. It was classic 90s bullying, a nickname given to a real person. Teenagers making fun of other teenagers. A girl dated a Magic player, and then a different Magic player. So they called her Gaz, after Ghazban Ogress, the only creature that changed controllers.
We aren't excusing anyone who participated, but it's fair to assume that most of these people are adults who would make better decisions now.
But Wizards printed the joke onto a card.
Printing a sexist in-joke into the game for eternity.
That card is Ghazban Ogress.
That's Cathy Nicoloff, but...
Now this card's been publicly discussed a few times since then.
But never by Wizards. Cedric and Pat at the Resleevables talked about it a bit.
Ghazban Ogress is a misogynistic in-joke about a female player dating multiple pros. And this is one of my least favorite things that I have found in my research of doing this show ever.
It's disgusting, and when people will try to hand wave the history of misogyny in the game or in the community or whatever, it's like, not only was this a joke, this went to print.
Yeah.
People thought this was a funny enough wink and do you know what this is all about? That they printed it in a set that they sold in stores.
Yeah.
Grotesque.
Yeah. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
An embarrassment. A stain on the game.
And also the card has come up in some discussions in our interviews.
Rosewater is completely 100% responsible for Unglued. Just inserts a joke about one of the very few women in the community for the grave offense of dating, having had relationships with multiple Magic pros. The same thing that people make fun of Taylor Swift for now. Like, completely not scandalous. And just lampoon her on a card.
The Tranquil Domain, we haven't made a lot of content about our own opinions.
We generally have stuck to letting the players tell the stories themselves, and this video is no exception. And we could take this opportunity to explain all the obvious ways in which this card is a problem and should never have seen print.
We could say that this card sent a strong anti-woman message in a game that was struggling to retain women and elevate them to the pro level.
He-Man Woman Haters Club.
We could say that it's a sexist double standard to shame a woman for dating multiple people in a world that lionizes men for doing the same.
We could say that reducing someone's love life to a punchline and then immortalizing the joke for eternity is way beyond the level of bullying that Magic has worked for decades to erase from its culture.
We could point out that Wizards has had a chance to acknowledge this card and apologize for it when they came out with a list of other offensive cards they want the world to forget about.
We could show the original sketches for the artwork and point out how they clearly used a real-life person as a reference, and then for some reason resketched it to make the Ogress uglier.
We could just point out that it isn't a woman watching a game and hoping to leave with the winner. It's actually 2 men playing for the ultimate prize of her attention. The implication that she is keeping score actually doesn't exist until Mark covers Unglued in one of his articles.
We could point out how turning a woman into an ogre is dehumanizing and defeminizing.
And that every other artwork in Magic that depicts a real person carries a human creature type.
But honestly, it isn't our place to do any of that. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is how the actual person that was bullied was affected and how they felt about the card when it was printed and how they feel about it now.
The story and the card belong to Cathy.
People like to disparage Cathy and make fun of her and call her the Ghazban Ogress. She's a fucking badass.
I'm Cathy Nicoloff. People used to call me Cathy when I was younger. I studied nuclear astrophysics in grad school, and I recently started playing Magic again after a 20-year break. Well, this time I decided not to indulge my competitive side, though I mostly play casual Commander. I still caretake the classicdojo.org website and have done so for the past 23 years. I created that site based on an archive that Frank Kusamoto sent me of his original dojo. So that's a good historical site to look at if you want to look at what Magic was like in the old days. I created in 2000 the spiritual successor to the Magic Dojo, which was Meridian Magic. And it was so popular that the connection logs actually had people from Renton, like WotC headquarters, connecting to it every day. It must have been like their start page on their browser. They had a qualifier for Pro Tour Dallas in 1996 in Texas, and it was a 4-slot qualifier held the weekend before the Pro Tour. So, like, if you won this qualifier, you were going to have 1 week to play test a deck for the Pro Tour. And of course, the qualifiers were different formats than the Pro Tours. That qualifier for Pro Tour Dallas 96, I wound up winning. It was an absolutely massive qualifier because it had 4 slots and took place at the last minute. There were at least 7 rounds of Swiss, probably 8, and then 3 of the finals, the top 8 cut to 3 more rounds. And that was when I had one of my proudest achievements in Magic, which was I qualified for a Pro Tour, which was on my bucket list. And the women who were there started coming out of what seemingly the woodwork. All the girlfriends of all the guys who were playing there started coming up to me after I won to shake my hand or give me a hug and to say, oh, wow, if you can do it, I can do it. And so being a visible presence for other women who hope to enter the tournament scene was one of my proudest achievements in Magic. And I also won Florida Regionals in 1997, which was, again, a 7 or 8 round within 3 rounds of finals. And that qualified me for U.S. Nationals in 97. But the way I won regionals was with 5-color green, an entirely new concept of a deck that had never been done before, originated mostly, I guess, with Matt Place, and I worked on it as a co-creator along with Dan Burdick and Nate Clark, and wound up being actually featured in an article written by Beth Morrison for The Duelist, and it was a brilliant deck. I'm very proud to have worked on that. I just wanted to be one of the guys at the time. That was the biggest compliment you could get, is if you were one of the guys. And man, when people say guys don't gossip, boy, are they lying. So the attention was mixed, but you were always being watched. I could not go anywhere without being watched. If I went to lunch with a friend, there would be a rumor the next day that I was seen with so-and-so and was I dating him? Even if I wasn't. Even if it was nothing more than a lunch where we were talking about decks or cards or draft strategy or whatever. So that's what it was like to be at a Pro Tour, is you would meet people who would white knight you and be like, sure, I'll loan you cards or I'll teach you how to play or whatever. And you'd meet people who'd been jilted by girls and were angry at all women and would take it out on you. I was doing content creation, website creation, deck construction, theory crafting, playing, tournament organization, all of it. And that's why people knew about me, I think, was just because I was everywhere. And I looked cute in a sundress. Mark pulled me aside at an event prior to the printing of the card. And it was just kind of this awkward-ish conversation where he's like, oh, by the way, we're printing this card in unglued. I don't remember how he described the card. He may have described it in full. I remember just my impression at the time was kind of one of shock and just this kind of inner silence. And I just kind of nodded and went, okay, what was I going to do? This was Mark Rosewater. Mark Rosewater wielded enormous power over the game and continues to do so. I was just, a small-time wannabe pro player. So at that moment, this is going to sound melodramatic, but it just kind of broke me a little because I had thought Mark was a friend. I thought he had, yeah, he was trying to be humorous, but he had the best interests of the players at heart. And now I'd been handed this tiger by the tail, and I had to either ride it or get eaten by it. That was what Mark gave to me. And so I decided, okay, I have to ride this tiger. I have to lean into the joke and attempt to reclaim it. There's kind of an art to reclaiming a slur, and it's by not fighting. It's by owning it. If you fight, you give your bullies fuel, you give them power over you, and if you don't fight, they get bored and they move on. So I didn't fight. I just kind of nodded. And people brought them to me to sign, and I did so. But in the background, I was quietly collecting them, trying to reduce the number of them in the world. And I think I still have 2 binder pages of them still. Brian Kibler posted about it on Twitter, and that was brought to my attention. I can't remember by who. But that's how it came up on my radar again after all those years of silence. But his Twitter post got linked over on Reddit, and there were people there who were debating about the card. Like, is this card that bad? Oh, and saying, oh, I never knew this card actually meant that. That's kind of gross. And is this card targeted at an individual, or is it just targeted at this kind of woman who hangs around your local game shop and is a thirst trap for the guys? And that was the moment I just kind of went, ah, the hell with it. I got to own this. I need to correct the record. So, like, people were being wrong on the internet, and I needed to correct the record about this. History was being forgotten. And a lot of people were giving WotC the benefit of the doubt about what they and Mark Rosewater had really intended when they printed this card. And I admit I still felt just a little bit angry and a little bit hurt by the whole thing, because this was like an elephant in the room, and nobody had ever apologized to me. So I outed myself in that Reddit thread as the inspiration for the card, and that was when I went, yeah, I was the inspiration for Ghazban Ogress, and here's how it went down. That was when I began to, I guess, change my view of what the card meant to me. Well, I'm no longer hurt by it or even shamed by it, you know? When it first came out, I signed these ogresses because I didn't feel like I could say no to people. You know, it was that whole don't give your bullies fuel. But now I sign them because I want to. Not many people can say, hey, I have my own magic card, no matter how it came to exist. So Mark Rosewater accidentally did me an honor with that, even if his intention was to make me into a joke or a meme. So I can hold my head high and I can say, I'm Cathy Nicoloff. I am the Ghazban Ogress.
Thanks for watching. If you like the video, the best way to support us is to buy a t-shirt. After that, you can like, share, subscribe, join the Discord, join the Patreon, and leave a comment about what story you want to see next.